Okay, this is the homework help video for Honors Math 3, Unit 6, Worksheet 1. And I am going to start with question number 12. So we want to graph this. So let me get some graph paper here. So for question number 12, I'm going to go ahead and add the 2 to the other side, so it belongs to the y. And then I want to find my start and my stretch. So my vertex, so I'll start with my vertex. So I'm going to do it alphabetical order. So x before y, and then opposite on both. So the opposite here, so that'll be positive 5. And then go to my y value, so plus 2 will turn into negative 2. And then my stretch is going to be negative 3/4. So then for my graph, so I'm going to go to 5, negative 2. So I'm going to go over 5 and then down 2. So there's my vertex. And then my stretch is negative 3/4. So I pay attention to what direction we're going. So this is a y equals graph. So if it's y equals, that means it's going to run vertically, like run with the y-axis, so run vertically. So I'm going to go down 3/4 and then over 1. So if we need to be precise, we would plug in numbers for x and y and solve for y and then find better approximations. But right now we're just doing a sketch. So we don't have to accurately graph, but fairly accurate. And then, so my vertex is here at 5, negative 2, and then we're also asked to find the line of symmetry. So the line of symmetry goes through the vertex, and then it will bisect the parabola to where it's symmetric on both sides. So then for my line of symmetry, I'm going to label it with an L, and then I have to state the equation for it. So it has to be an equation, so I state what axis it crosses through and at what value. So it's crossing through the x-axis and then at 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So then my line of symmetry would be x is equal to 5. Okay. All right, and then let's take a look at number 18. So for 18, I'm going to do the same thing again. So I'm going to put this in descriptive form, so I'm going to subtract 1 to the other side. And then I'm going to find my vertex. So alphabetical order, opposite in both. So x before y, so I go to the x, so the opposite of negative 1. Go to your y value, so my y value here, so instead of negative 4, positive 4. So there's my vertex. And then my stretch is negative 1. Okay. So I'm going to add a little bit more here. So for number 18, so I'm going to go over 1 and then up 4. And so there's my vertex. And so I want to look to see what direction I'm going, right? So this always has to be something in our thoughts, right? So this says x is equal to, so that means it's going to run with the x-axis, so it's going to run sideways. So run with the x-axis because it's x equals. And my stretch is negative 1, so that means I'm going to go left because it needs to go point in the negative x direction. So I'm going to go left 1 and then up 1 and then reflect. And so left 1 and then down 1. And so that will give me this graph here. And then my line of symmetry here. So I'm going to label that with an L. So there's my line of symmetry. And my line of symmetry, so I'm crossing what axis at what value? So I'm crossing the y-axis at 4. So y equals 4. So there's my vertex and my line of symmetry. So this is my vertex here, by the way, and my line of symmetry. So this one is also asking for the directrix, the focus, and all of that. So I want to go ahead and find that. So I have to use the formula for that. So I'm going to do that down here. So I do my stretch, which was -1. And then, so my stretch is -1, and then I equal that to 1 over 4c. So that's a formula we need to know. Then I'm going to take the reciprocal of both sides to get 4c to the numerator. So the reciprocal of 1 over 4c is 4c. And then whatever I do to the right side, I have to do to the left. And the reciprocal of -1 is still -1. And then divide by 4. So then c is -1/4. So that's tough to draw, right? Because these are small graph, you know, but we're going to do the best we can. So we want to go left and right 1/4. So we're going to go left 1/4, so from the vertex, so left 1/4. So that gives me my focus because that's between the branches of the parabola. So that one's my focus. And then I'm also going to go right 1/4 from the vertex. So here's the vertex and then right 1/4. And then that gives me a dot on the directrix. So a dot on the directrix. So the directrix is a line that runs perpendicular to the line of symmetry. And then I'm just going to put a D there for that. Okay. And so then for my directrix, so that equation is going to be, so it's going to cross the x-axis, right? So it's going to cross the x-axis down here. And so the vertex was originally at 1, and then we went to the right 1/4, so that would be at 1 and 1/4. So 1 and 1/4, or 1.25. And then for my focus, so I'll do that over here. So for my focus, so again, I'm going from the vertex to the left 1/4. So I was at 1, and I went to the left 1/4, so that would put me at 3/4. And then my height is still the same, which was at 4. Okay, so then my focus is at 3/4 and 4. Okay. And then let's take a look at 27. So we want to put this into descriptive form. So the first thing I'm going to do is move my constant over to the non-squared term, so to x. So this will be x minus 1. And then I'm going to factor, let me move this over just a little bit so I have some room for the other problem. So I'm going to subtract 1 to the other side, and then I want to factor out that -3. So again, all I'm doing is factoring out the -3. So I'm subtracting the constant to the x term and then taking the -3 out of both of those. And then I want to complete the square over here. So I would take half of 6, which is, or half of -6, which is -3. And then if I were to distribute this out, I would get y squared minus 6y and then plus 9. So I need to add a 9 there. And then whatever I add to one side, I have to add to the other. So I'm not just adding 9, I'm adding in 9 inside the parentheses, which is being multiplied by -3. So -3 times 9 is -27, so I need to add -27 over here. And so then that gives me x minus 28. Okay. All right, and then I want to graph this one as well. So excuse me. I'm getting over a cold here, so this one's going to be tough to graph, right? Because it's out to 28. So that's kind of crazy. So hold on 1 second. Okay. So I'm going to count by 4s because this is, again, going to be tricky to graph. So this is at 4 here. So let me double check that. Yeah, so there's 28, but I'm going to still count by 1s for this. There we go. Okay, so then, sorry, Sorry, people. Great video. Lots of sickness happening. Okay, so for my vertex, so I'm going to be at 28 and then 3. So alphabetical order, X before Y, opposite on both. So 28, positive 3. And then my stretch is negative 3. So I'm going to go over 28 up to 3. And then this is an x equals graph, so that means it's going to run with the x-axis, so it'll be horizontal. So I'm going to go left 3 and then up 1. So left 3, up 1. So remember I counted by 4s, right? So I'm not going to go a full box because I counted by 4. So left 3, up 1, and then left 3, down 1. So again, each box is worth 4 going along the x-axis, so that's why it looks a little weird. And then I'm going to draw my line of symmetry. So for my line of symmetry, it crosses the y-axis, and then it crosses at 3. And then I have my vertex there, so now I want to find my focus and my directrix. So I use my stretch, which is negative 3. So I do my stretch equal to the formula 1 over 4c. So take the reciprocal of both sides. So this will be negative 1/3 equals 4c. And then I'm going to divide this side by 4, which is the same as multiplying by a 4th. So then c equals negative 1/12. Okay, so these are not the friendliest of numbers, but that's okay. So from the vertex, I'm going to go left and right 1/12, so that's like barely any. So it's going to be exaggerated just so I can fit it in there. So that's my focus. And then my directrix also go 1/12 away from the vertex. Okay, so for the directrix, so I went from my vertex, which was at 28, and I went to the right 1/12. So I started at 28, which is where the vertex is, and I went to the right 1/12. So it's crossing the x-axis at 28 and 1/12. So lovely numbers. Okay, so now for the focus. So again, I started at 28, and I went left 1/12. So that would put me at 27 and 11/12. So I'm just going 1/12 off of a 28. And then my height is still the same at 3. And so there's my focus and directrix. Okay? And let's take a look at the back side. Okay, we're going to take a look at 34. Actually, let's do 36 because it's a little bit harder. Okay, so for 36, we want to write the equation. So for this here, so I'm going to just do a little sketch so I have an idea of what I'm working with. So I have at negative 3, 2, and at 1, 2. And then A is less than 0. So I know that this is my focal chord endpoints. And so that means the focus is smack dab in the middle of these two. So I want to be in the middle of these 2 points. And so that would be at the same height. So it's still going to be at 2, but it's going to be at 1, 2. And so I can do that just by counting. So 2 spaces, or I can average, right? So negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. Divided by 2 is negative 1. So that gets me at negative 1 there. So that's my focus. And then it says here A is less than 0. So that means the graph is going to go downwards, right? Downwards, so something like that. So I need to find my vertex. So in order to find my vertex, I need to know what my C value is. So that means that this whole length here is 4C, right? So that, again, that's part of the formula. So 4C. And that total distance, so between these 2 points, is 4, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. So these dots are 4 away. So 4C equals 4, so C is equal to 1. So that means that if C is 1, so for my focus, I would go up 1, right? And that would give me my vertex. So up 1, that gives me a vertex, because it's 1 away. So the vertex and the focus is C away from each other, so 1 away. So then that means my vertex is still at -1, right? Because that didn't change. But instead of being at 2, I went up 1, so it's at 3. And so this is a y equals graph. So the equation so there's my equation. So my k value is 3. And my c is 1. And my h is -1, so minus -1, so plus 1, and then squared. So, and then 4 times 1, of course, is just 4. And there's my equation of the parabola.